Thank you, Ms. Chair. The Indian Law Resource Center thanks the President and the advisors for your good work to prepare this zero draft resolution. The text overall is a very good starting point for the beginning of intergovernmental negotiations and the culmination of decades of work by courageous Indigenous leadership. We wish to offer a few comments today to ensure the document remains responsive to the call of the World Conference Outcome Document and other UN reports, Secretary General's reports, and UN resolutions recognizing that Indigenous peoples' decision-making institutions have important contributions to make to the United Nations. Regarding the preambular paragraphs, there remains some confusion in the text in the use of the term Indigenous peoples generally, which is inconsistent with not only the title of the document itself, but also the purpose of this entire process. We suggest that to ensure consistency throughout the document and with the World Conference Outcome Document, operative paragraph 33, we recommend replacing the term Indigenous peoples with Indigenous peoples representative institutions in preambular paragraphs 13 through 16. Regarding operative paragraph 6 on venues, we support other delegations that express support for option 1. The outcome document itself calls for participation in, quote, meetings of relevant UN bodies, end quote. We feel that relevant UN bodies includes the General Assembly and its main committees, which has an annual resolution on the rights of Indigenous peoples, as well as some subsidiary bodies, and this option is reflected in option 1. Indigenous peoples representative institutions' ability to not only attend and observe meetings of relevant UN bodies is important, but they need to actually be able to participate. And so I appreciate the reference to attend and participate in the modalities section. And we feel that participate should include, at minimum, making written and oral contributions, as well as to exercise the right of reply where necessary. These rights are imperative to ensure that Indigenous peoples, through their representative institutions, are able to contribute in meaningful, permanent ways to the UN. Of course, we understand some practical constraints on participation will be necessary because of time and space considerations. However, we are extremely concerned by attempts to limit the ability of Indigenous peoples' representative institutions to participate on their own behalf by prescribing a regional formula for seating and speaking slots, as indicated by operative paragraphs 12C and 12E. Operative paragraphs 20 and 21, as others have pointed out, which propose that the selection body seek commensurate regional representation in making its accreditation decisions are troubling for the same reasons. Participation cannot be rationed out. Indigenous peoples' representative institutions are the duly comprised governments of their constituents, and they simply cannot be representative of any other Indigenous people but themselves. The task for the new selection body is simply to evaluate all applications fairly, to determine whether the applicant meets the objective criteria and standards. While geographic balance may be relevant in organizing the work of this body, limiting representation on a regional basis is simply not workable. There are many Indigenous peoples in some regions, and there are few in others, and not every Indigenous people will seek to participate in every meeting. And the resolution must not insist on exact parity by region in this process. It would be manifestly unfair to deny perfectly qualified applicants on this basis alone. And any reference to commensurate representation across regions, such as that in paragraph 20, should therefore be deleted. Paragraph 20 would make it possible and even likely that some institutions would be excluded for no other reason than simply that others from the region have already been accredited. What possible reason could there be for excluding any genuine, legitimate institution meeting the objective criteria? Regarding the selection committee, we would support an option comprised of experts serving in their personal capacity. We feel that option 1 is a good path forward. The committee must include some Indigenous government leaders, or at minimum consult with Indigenous government leaders or experts. We do not support options proposing to use existing UN bodies, such as the Permanent Forum, to complete the important work of accreditation, including the receipt, review, or evaluation of applicants. This is simply inappropriate, as this is a General Assembly process. Existing bodies and mechanisms lack the expertise and capacity to take on this work. A body composed solely of state representatives would likewise lack the requisite expertise and could increase the risk of politicization of this process. Reference to the need for the committee to be balanced by considerations for gender, youth, and persons with disabilities is also not appropriate for the purpose of accrediting Indigenous representative institutions. Finally, regarding the selection criteria, we support consideration of the listed relevant factors, and we would suggest adding to the list that the institution seeking accreditation must be a legitimate representative institution, that is, an entity that is duly constituted by and accountable to the people, though no particular form of government should be required. And while reference to a democratic election is important in 37B, many governments are appointed by traditional authorities, and this fact should also be taken into consideration. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the process. It has now been 94 years since my great-grandfather, Haudenosaunee Chief Desgahe, attempted to address the League of Nations in 1923. This is a dream that would have been realized had this important question been answered then, and I hope we can answer it in the coming weeks. Thank you.